Hey, I wanted to make a quick video. I just saw the Lex Friedman podcast with Joe Rogan, and they were talking about Afghanistan. And I really hope Lex Friedman sees this because this is a argumentative point. It's not necessarily about the topic itself, but it's about kind of the motions people make during arguments. And the better you can identify these patterns, the easier it is to talk to people during arguments or when people are making points. And you can persuade people. It's actually really effective. And one of the things is kind of to look at the choreography of an argument. So when people are presented with a point, what move do they make? And that's why you call it choreography, because people will come at arguments from different angles, and then they will make different moves once they're in an argument. So what is really common is something that Lex Friedman did when Joe Rogan brought the specific point about Afghanistan, how it was handled, what moves were made, what moves could have been done differently, and kind of just what was going on with Afghanistan. And Lex Friedman, he does this a lot, which is why I wanted to make a video on this, and also just to show people kind of how this works. Go and watch it. It's up on YouTube. You can watch the whole podcast on Spotify. He abstracts the point. Instead of talking about specifics, which he himself noted that he's not really that informed about, he said he hasn't seen any of the videos, he doesn't really know what's going on. Instead of talking about specifics, what he did is he abstracted the point to authoritarianism generally. You'll see this a lot. When people don't know what they're talking about, they'll throw out like a point, whether they're for or against climate change, or for or against feminism, or for or against the Republican Party. You can immediately see people's weak spots when they come to a point. They say something, you maybe give a little pushback, or maybe you introduce the point, and they immediately abstract to a different concept, or to that concept more broadly, and then that's their weak point. And the reason why I do this is because this is why arguments last forever. You can have a 10-hour argument with someone and get nothing resolved, because then any time you get to a specific point and you start to nail down something, they will immediately abstract to something else and say, well, what about this point generally? And that's when you have to hold people accountable. And you have to tell people like, hey, no, that's not what we're talking about. You were talking specifically about X, Y, and Z. So it's something very common. If you talk to people about gun violence, you'll show them kind of the stats and the statistics and all of that good stuff. And when you start proving to them, point A, B, and C, they'll immediately switch to, okay, well, what about suicides? Look at how many suicides are performed with a gun. It's like, hey, that's a different topic. If you want to talk about that, we can. But first, we need to finish talking about this. Because if people want to talk about death generally, including suicide plus murder plus self-defense, that's a different topic altogether than just mass murder or just gang violence or just self-defense. So it's very important to nail these down specifically and not let people escape by abstracting to different concepts. So Lex Friedman talks about authoritarianism generally, and then essentially says we have no solution. So it went from discussing a very specific topic with very specific causes and effects and very specific solutions to talking about oppression generally. And well, if we can't help people in North Korea without going into China, and we can't help people in Taiwan without helping people in North Korea, and so we can't really help people in Iran without this and that. It's like, and then we can't do anything. So it's like, the whole point of this argument is just to get past that point and move to something else, because that person has essentially been caught with their pants down. And not necessarily saying that's true of Lex Friedman, but that is how a lot of people use this argumentative structure. And if you watch the point on Joe Rogan, they never come to anything definitive. They never even continue with the point. And that's how this works. Someone brings up a point you're not necessarily comfortable talking about, or you're not necessarily knowledgeable about. Lex Friedman says himself he hasn't seen any of the videos, he doesn't really know what's going on. So then you abstract to something that's much larger, and of course anything really large has no solution. If world peace had a solution, we would have found it by now. If an end to inequality was possible, we would have done it by now. So people try and abstract these immensely large social abstractions. Anyways, the whole thing is, and it would be great to have Lex actually clarify this. The whole point is that, look, what happened in Afghanistan wasn't inevitable. What we should have done is removed all of the citizens in Afghanistan who helped us. They spent day in, day out risking their lives, their children's lives, their families, to help to make sure the United States was successful. They're the first people we should have gone out, and I'll tell you why in a second. These people, there are people in Afghanistan there are women who are 18 years old, who are adults over in their culture, who don't know anything other than American occupation. They've been listening to American, they've learned English, they believed America about democracy, about human rights, about feminism. Any woman who did that, dead. And if they don't commit suicide, they're gonna wish they did shortly. So wholesale genocide is going to occur, or is it in the process of occurring? And it's really not cool how we did things. We should have first removed all of the vulnerable citizens who risked their lives day in, day out to make sure America was successful. The reason you remove them first is because they're the most vulnerable. And you have the largest support system, and you have the largest number of people on the ground who know them, who've been working with them, who can testify that this person is, would be a good American, or this person is actually who they say they are, because I see them every day. If you take out all the Americans first, then it's very hard to verify who people are. But if someone's working with another person, or if you have 5 Americans who work with this person every day for the last 10 years, they're not going to mistake them for someone else. They're going to know their name, they're going to know their face, and that's why you want to remove those people first, and their families. So then you remove the American civilians, people who have no business being there. Maybe leave some diplomats, because theoretically the government is going to stand, but those are the people you remove first. There shouldn't be more than 200 Americans in Afghanistan at that point. Lastly, you remove the soldiers and the diplomats. Everyone else goes. About 2,000 soldiers. I see one C-17. I think they were held at least 800 people in one of these trips. So you can probably get everyone out in 3 different planes. Probably about 10 planes realistically if you want room for the equipment. Lastly, what you do is you do a very slow withdrawal, and you tell the Taliban, like, hey, these are the terms on which we withdraw. If you break these terms, if you steal equipment, if you take over these towns, if you take over these these counties and these cities, we will just bomb them. We're going to bomb you to the Stone Age. And the reason for this isn't just because you're bombing the Taliban. You're letting the Afghan army know that you do lose if you give up. It's not just something where, like right now, if the Taliban tells you, hey, you've got to give up or die, surrender or die, you might just surrender just to live, or just for a chance of living. If America is on the other side saying, hey, we can't let our equipment fall into the hands of the enemy, so if you surrender, we're going to have to start droning the place. That's a much different feel to the whole situation, and the Taliban is going to be much less likely just to roll right through, especially if after they took the first city, you start dropping bombs. And people don't like this, but this is what you need to do for long-term stability. When the United States makes a threat and makes demands, it has to be followed through. And the whole point about dealing with predators, and predators in groups, but also just predators as individuals, is they're always probing for weak spots. They're seeing how far can I push this before I receive any significant pushback. And it's also true for predators who are hunting down, who are trying to mug men, or trying to rape women, or trying to mug women, or just murder anyone. They always push and see how far they can get, because they want to know if you're vulnerable or not, right? So can I walk close to you? Can I start talking to you? Can I put a hand on you? And if you let people get close to you in that way, if you show them that you don't have very strict boundaries, they'll push and push and push and take everything until they have everything they want, which is exactly what the Taliban did. So you have to make the threats, you have to make sure you're good on them, and then and essentially that's it. You should have removed everyone, all of the Afghans first, then the civilians. Shouldn't have been more than 200 people in Afghanistan who were non-military, and then you should have removed the military as well. Anyways, thank you so much. I hope, Lex, that you see this. I don't know if you noticed that you did this, that if you abstracted away. Most people don't realize that they're doing this, and they don't realize why whenever you get into these big conversations with people, nothing ever gets resolved. With me, it's not necessarily the case. When I talk to my friends or my family, I always stick to the very specific point we were talking about. We then move to other points, but not until I don't let people abstract away. And I've had a ton of success with this. You can too. All right, thanks. Bye.